Okay, welcome to the presentation on writing the justice paper. Congratulations, we've made it here. Think about all the work that we've done to get here. We started just looking at those expository essays, learning the different types of justice was first. So first, actually, we classified justice, looking at all those different types. And so then after that, we read all the different stories that I provided to you. You sorted them. And then you started doing your research. You read the pool choices. You did some open research. We did the whole mini unit on legal justice where we taught you how to write that journey, that inductively ordered paper with a thesis at the end where the journey is a progression towards the thesis. We taught you how to do that. You analyzed how to write a stop. You tried to write a stop. And then we did all the different synthesis papers. So we took all 6 types of justice, and then we started synthesizing them in pairs. And now we're ready to synthesize down into one final paper. So, okay, let's get started. So just some thoughts again of what we've been doing. We looked at all different words for justice. We've talked about structure, how to write an invitation, how to design a route in order to get to our destination, which is our thesis. We did the post-it noting where we mined our resources. That's where you filled out the green sheets. So whether or not you use post-it notes, you did mine your resources, all those different sources for your green sheets. I hope that your green sheets are super useful to you as you start to write your paper. Know that your synthesis papers will be very useful to you also. I know that students in the past have told me that they were so grateful for the synthesis papers at this point because they've already written summaries of so many of their sources. And so they were able to kind of copy and paste into their final paper and just do that tweaking so that their summary was targeted towards what new point they were making. But they'd done so much work already that they were so familiar. So your synthesis papers have led you to this point. Then we've talked about different patterns of development. Know that we're going to move away from classification. That's where we started because this paper is not really a classification essay. You will probably, writing that, you have that danger of talking about all the different types of justice, social, procedural, restorative, retributive, and those are words I don't really want to see in your paper. You were going for those bigger ideas of synthesis. So in other words, we're analyzing now. We're going to take that one word justice and look at it from all different sides. That's an analysis. We're going to use comparison and contrast and then definition, examples, and illustration, all of which I think you're pretty familiar with now. Okay, so now we're going to workshop some ideas for your thesis. You're going to need the pre-writing sheet. So make sure that you've printed that. This is actually due in the assignment folder. So you're going to want to work on it as I talk through these next few slides. So get that printed, pause the presentation if you need to, but go get that worksheet. Okay, so think about all the words that we've talked about so far. Here are some that came up over and over again. Issues of authority, who's in charge, what decisions are they making, and then that's causal because depending on the authority, then there is that idea of legitimacy. So is that authority legitimate? Then you have ideas of voice, who gets to talk, who's listening, the idea of balance and fairness, being wise. We talked about that in our mini unit legal justice paper with having a wise leader. And then we talked about protecting and serving, and my favorite word all along has been bound. So be thinking about all of these words in addition to others that you may have in your head as we move into working on that Venn diagram. So we did this Venn diagram right away when we first started talking about justice. You might want to look at what you did then because it might be a good tool for you now. You've come so far with your understanding of justice. So I'm having an idea that your Venn diagram will be different now. So I want you to go ahead and fill this out. Think about those essential traits of justice, the non-essential traits of justice, and you're still going to have that muddy middle. What's in the middle? What are you still not sure about whether it matters or not? So you're going to fill out the Venn diagram. Go ahead and pause the presentation. Do some of that pre-writing now. And then you're going to work on your thesis. So what words are you going to keep? What words matter? What words stand out to you? Because those are your essential traits of justice. And now you get to write your thesis. Now, keep in mind that we are no longer using our sentence starter. I don't want to see for there to be justice and then the rest of your sentence. Now, know that in your drafting, it is okay if you start there. I won't come down on you yet, but know that by the time we get to your final copy, we do not want that sentence starter anymore. If you needed to get started today, that's okay. Just know that I am going to want you to revise that later. So pause this presentation, write your thesis. Remember, that's the destination for your paper. Anytime you leave on a journey, you got to know where you're going. Your thesis provides that. It is the destination of your paper. It's what you're writing towards. So pause the presentation here. Write your thesis. Okay, remember this is an inductive paper. I think that we've harped on that a lot at this point because it's really important that you understand it's inductive. The thesis is at the end. Remember, the intro establishes the need to define justice, and then we write towards our definition, which comes at the end. We are not writing a deductive paper. You are not writing a 5-paragraph essay. You are not doing that. The thesis is not in the beginning. You are not going to tell me what justice is in the introduction. Okay, just remember that needs to be clear in your head. All right, so we talked about different journeys. It's now time for you to look at this list. You want to pause the presentation again here. Look at the list and see what makes the most sense. What kind of journey do you want to take your reader on in order to get to the destination thesis that you've already written? If you're looking at these journeys and you can't quite remember what they are and how they might be used, remember there was an entire presentation on this where I talked about every single one of these journeys, and I gave you examples of justice papers that students have done in the past that follow these journeys. If you look at this list and you don't know what to do and you feel lost, you might need to go back to that presentation and re-listen to it so that you can get it clear in your head. Hopefully at this point you're feeling comfortable and confident. I know some of you have already come to see me with great ideas about what journey you want to do. So at this point, pick one. Then on the journey graphic that I'm going to show you on the next slide, but if you're looking at the pre-writing sheet, it's that last page with all the arrows and the boxes. On the bottom left corner where all that blank space is, I want you to write your journey down. I want to know which journey you've chosen. So that's due when you turn this paper in, so make sure that's clear. Okay, and here's the graphic I was talking about. Do you see all that blank space on the bottom left? That's where I want you to tell me what kind of journey you've decided to do. So at this point, you need to think about, in combination of your journey and your thesis, how are you going to get to your thesis? What are you going to talk about first? What are you going to talk about second? What are you going to talk about third, fourth, fifth, however many stops? Remember, this graphic has an arbitrary number of boxes. It was just to make it kind of form a complete page. You may not use all of these boxes. You do not have to have this many stops on your way. So just know you don't have to fill them all up, but you might depending on what you're doing. So think about how are you going to map out that progression. Think about all of the synthesis papers and how we marked those progressions. So I'm trying to remember now, with the legal justice paper, we started with a wise leader. And if there was a wise leader, then there's a reciprocal commitment. And if there's a reciprocal commitment, then the laws can protect everyone. That journey had 3 stops. Think about some of the synthesis papers. I know that I'm trying to think of the last one. You had retributive and restorative justice. The journey had to start with a crime being committed, because if there's a crime, then there must be punishment. And then after there's punishment, there has to be some kind of restoration. So think about the journey. What makes sense? What has to happen first to lead to this, to lead to the next part, to lead to the next part that'll get you to your thesis. So map your journey out by the stops along the way. Okay, then I want you to think about your invitation. I would like on the back some thoughts on that. How are you going to start? So if you've chosen incident to deeper reflection, what incident are you starting your paper with? Tell me that, so I kind of get an idea of where you're headed. If you need help, The New York Times, there's 2 links on this slide. Now, no, in the video they won't work, so they are linked in your subfolder. But you've got the New York Times did a lot of work on ways to develop expository writing skills. They talk about what they call leads and kickers. So how do you start? What's the lead? We called that our invitation. What's the kicker? We've called that our destination. So look at it. Meg actually likes number 2, so I put it on here, so you might want to look at that one. But look at the different examples they've given you. There's also there's a Prezi here that someone's done that you can look at leads and expository writing. Just kind of click around and think about how you might want to start your essay and give me your ideas. Okay. Next, there's the text sorting. I would love you to get as specific as you possibly can on this pre-writing. So if you're going to say, okay, like for example, legal justice, let's go back to that because that was how we taught you how to do this. In the legal justice paper, we said, okay, the first thing that matters is a wise leader. All right, well, I'm going to make sure that I use Prince Lepiot and the king and the story of a good king. And I might even use the emperor from An Emperor's New Clothes. Tell me what text you're going to use and the order that you're going to use them. Think back to those synthesis planning sheets where we did that, especially for the communicative and distributive. We led you through that. You're going to start here, and then you're going to go this text, and then this text, and that will be my transition text to my second stop. Get as far as you can on this pre-writing sheet. It's only going to help you when you do your brain dump. So sort, think about how you're going to use your text. Now, you can see on the left side of the slide that in order to meet expectations on the grading sheet, you have to use 10 texts, which if you think about it, you have a text set of 33 texts. Using 10 is a small part of that. So you should be thinking of your 10 best texts. Now know that this is just to meet my expectations. Meeting expectations gives you a C. If you don't want a C and you want to do better on this paper, you are gonna have to use more text than that. And I actually think that's not a hard thing to do. You have so many texts and you have to use the expository texts in order to provide the theoretical backbone for your paper. So because of that, I really think you're going to have no trouble going over this. I know most students in the past have used about 15 or so, and that led them to a really confident paper. So think about that. You might need to add text. I know some of you have already talked to me about that. If you want to add text, I want you to notify me so we can talk about that, because even though this slide says they don't count in your 10 total, they might. It depends on what you're doing. So contact me if you're adding texts. Okay. So then think about your destination. Now, right now, you might only know, well, my destination is my thesis. Now, again, I mentioned incident to deeper reflection. If you're going to use that, you should really circle back to that incident at the end of your paper. So you may not have a really good idea of your destination other than that it's going to have your thesis, but be thinking about that. Get as much information as you can on that pre-writing sheet. Okay, I'm going to let you read through these next 2 slides. What I did is I was thinking about this is I started Googling other freshman comp courses across the country to look at how they talk to their students about writing definition papers. And I found a couple different syllabi and I kind of stole some language from there. So I just want you to read this, another view slide. This is from another instructor's teaching on a definition paper. So read this one, and then I'm going to go fast. So if you want to look at the PowerPoint or kind of pause and go back, you certainly can. And then here's another one that I took from another syllabus for another kind of definition paper. Now, she actually calls your definition paper an argument, which if you think about it, it is. You are arguing for your definition of justice. So this might also help you too. Anything to provide clarity and help is what we try to give you. Okay, so then for Wednesday, you need to finish this pre-writing worksheet. Now, I do realize I missed something. Your paper is not due at noon. You know your deadlines are not noon. My colleague Meg has all of her deadlines at noon. Sorry, I missed that. When I transferred the presentation over. You have your deadline at 11:30. That's what time the Dropbox folder closes. You're used to that. Just know it's 11:30. So you have a couple things you have to do. Make sure your Venn diagram is done. Write your thesis. Figure out what journey you're going on. Map it out, your stops. And I'd even like you to include as many texts as you can so that I can kind of see what you're doing. Okay. Then your brain dump is due on Friday. Get it all down. Get as far as you can. Write your invitation the best that you can and get as far along your journey as you can. Get as far as you can. I think I gave you lots of specific instructions on the assignment folder in D12, where I told you to write all the way to 11 o'clock on Friday. Write all the way to 11 o'clock. And then I want you to stop and end by asking me questions, telling me where you're going to go next. Give me that kind of skeleton outline of what's coming. It might have changed from your pre-writing once you start writing. So tell me where you're going and tell me what problems, questions, and concerns you're having. So write all the way to 11 o'clock on Friday. Give me where you're going and what you're struggling with so that I can help you. Okay, I think that is it. Please let me know what questions you have, and I cannot wait to see your first draft and your pre-writing sheets. I'll try to give you feedback and help you along the way. We're going to do this. It's going to be great. Good luck, have fun, and keep writing.